All right, so today, biometrics and our standard disclaimer, of course. So I got two people waiting. Hold on here. There we go. Standard disclaimer is your mileage may vary. The information contained in this class is provided only as general information, which may be incomplete or outdated. All right, so just be aware of that. And for folks online, if you don't want your face recorded, please turn off your camera or cover it, however you want to handle that, because we are recording the entire screen. All right, it's our website, ANVCS.org. That's where you can find the classes and then past class videos and then class summaries and those types of things are in there. I did not create a class summary for today's class. I might do that afterwards. I'll get your feedback at the end to see if it's necessary or helpful. And then info@anvcs.org is how to get a hold of us. All right. So here's where I want to talk about the whole thing about security and credentials. I was trying to come up with a clever way to show this. I couldn't really do it clever, so I'm just pardon this ugly thing. But if we start, I mean, the components of a passphrase are text, numbers, and symbols, right? From that, we build a passphrase. Then we add a passphrase to a slight rule about saying we're going to take the first four letters of the website or service, and we're going to combine it with a passphrase to create a password. Okay, so that's how we get out to password. Now let's look on the other side of this, and this is what we're going to talk about today. The components of a biometric could be fingerprint, face, or voice. Yes?
If we have a repeat of that sequence verbalized one more time, just for the art of
Absolutely. Okay, so we start with text, numbers, and symbols. Okay, and so text is, of course, A through Z, and capital letters are different than, little letters. All right. So just understand that a capital A is a different character than a small a, right? So those are the components that we use to create a passphrase. Okay. And a passphrase is usually 3 to 5 words that mean something to us, but to the public, they wouldn't have any meaning. They can't look it up about us, right? So with those things, with those components, we create a passphrase. Now we want a password for every single service that we do. We want it to be as unique as possible. So when we go to a service like, let's say, Wells Fargo, we're going to take the first. No, I'm not saying we should do Wells Fargo, but I'm just using it as an example. We're going to take the first 4 letters, WELL, and now we're going to combine that with our passphrase to create a password for Wells Fargo. Make sense? Okay, so that's how we get to a password in the current stack. Now let's go on the other side, and here's what we're going to talk about today and why it's changing the flavor a bit. Our fingerprint, our face, and our voice are biometric components. Those are things that can be used to create a biometric. In other words, it's stuff that's about, it's related to us physically or functionally, right? Then a biometric is used to create a passkey. Now, as we move forward, we can use both passkeys and passwords, which is typically how most sites work. They're going to ask you to do both. But as we move further on, I think out here a year, we probably won't even be creating passwords anymore. We'll just be creating passkeys. All right. And both of those can be used in conjunction with each other to be our security and access control or access credentials to our accounts. Does that make sense? Okay, so I was trying to show how all these things are related, and this is trying to distill it into something very simple, but it's not a simple concept. Okay.
Is there a reason why they delayed just going right to biometrics? Because it's so unique.
Yes, the hard part about biometrics is, typically you got to do 3 things, right? It has to be secure, it has to be fast, and it has to be convenient, okay? Usually you could choose 2 of those, not get all 3, right? It's like, here's the 3, choose 2. But technology today is finally caught up where we can store and compare and do all this cryptography extremely fast. So now we can get all 3 of those things together, but it's taken us a while to get there. Now, the next part of that is standards. Now we have to get everybody to agree on how to do this. And that's been the hard part. So Google, Microsoft, and Apple kind of led this whole thing to do passkeys. Okay. They're the ones that made the investment. They did the campaigning. They released all the specifications, and the whole world has been following. Okay. And we're finally getting to the point where now we can all use it. And can everybody hear my voice online? We had a text saying that people could not hear me. Is that
Yes.
okay? Thank you.
So this has been released worldwide.
This is worldwide. Yes. And it's really odd when I was in Europe, 20 years ago, people were using Nokia hand phones. This is before they were even smartphones, to be able to buy stuff in vending machines. I mean, they were way ahead of us on this type of stuff. But now we have standards that the whole world can follow. Okay. So what is a biometric? What does that really mean? What's the definition? It's the science of establishing the identity of a person based on physical or behavioral attributes. I like to say functional, such as fingerprint, hand, face, iris, voice, and gait. Okay. Well, when you think about this, there's a pretty ominous thing going on behind this, because once it becomes functional, like gait and things like that, if you're ever in a place like Great Britain has cameras everywhere throughout their cities. And based on your gait, they pretty much know who you are and where you are at all times. That's pretty spooky. And they did this because this was in reaction to all the terrorism things. It wasn't just the IRA stuff that was going on. They also had terrorism coming from, the continent. Okay. So they really had to lock down things. And quite frankly, the citizenry were for it. So far, they haven't been hacked too badly, and they haven't really abused it. But you can see if there's a change in regime and somebody really wants to be nefarious, this stuff could be really used against us. So just be aware that biometrics, as good as they are, we want some constraints on it. I don't like having Big Brother watching me because biometrics are available. All right, let's talk about a fingerprint scan. These are two types of fingerprints. I should have showed a third one, darn it. This is on an Apple iPad today. You can just press the little power switch or just tap it. You don't really press it, and it'll read your fingerprint. The older phones, and I think still the SEs, still have the button on the bottom. So the button is your fingerprint scanner. If we're on an Android, most Androids today actually have the fingerprint scanner embedded on the screen, which is really convenient because it'll show you, oh, here's where you put your finger on the screen and you put it there. Whereas Apple, I think, is a little confusing because they'll have a picture of a fingerprint, on the screen, but they want you to touch the button. And so it's a little odd. But then it does literally scan your fingerprint and figures out the unique things of it. But here's what's interesting and why I like the limitations that are going on our devices. In these standards now for using biometrics and creating passkeys, they're requiring that the biometrics are never stored raw. Okay. The biometric goes through something called a cryptographic hash. In other words, all the digital information about its picture goes through this cryptographic thing, and it becomes a cryptographic representation. That's all it is. And that's the only thing stored on the device. So even if somebody gets into your device, they don't get your biometrics. Okay. There's only a mathematical, cryptographically encrypted thing on the device.
Cutting off your index finger won't help them to get in.
Cutting off your index finger would help. Actually, it would. Okay, so but the thing I want to say though is that they can't steal your device, create a model of your finger or your face, and then go out and steal your stuff. Can't do that. Okay, so it's cryptographically stored on a device, and that is really critical that it never leaves the device.
Well, there are two sides to your question. If you cut off your fingertip
Yes.
and put it through the blade,
Yes.
then it's gone.
Yep.
If somebody else cuts your finger off and runs off and uses it, then they can hack the system.
That's correct. So there are two sides to that coin, right? As if we have like a fingerprint. Somebody could have our finger and get into things and without our permission, right? And you can see how there are some very, nefarious people that would do things like that.
They
The
have
other
to-
side, go
they
ahead.
have to know which finger.
True. Okay, they'll take your whole hand. Um, the next thing is too that as we lose our fingerprints, so I like to work on my motorcycles and cars, and some of those things can be very caustic. I wear gloves all the time, so my fingerprints are pretty good, but a lot of people don't. And if you're working around caustic components, let's say you're a potter, you work on a potting wheel. Those people are notorious for losing their fingerprints.
Oh,
Okay.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So because a potting material is very caustic and it's also very coarse. All right. So they tend to lose their fingerprints. And that means after time that these things aren't going to work, things are going to change. They have to update stuff. Diana, you have a question?
Yeah, I thought somewhere they took my fingerprint for the biometric, but they took another different finger for an alternate just in case. Do they do that for Apple?
Yes, in Apple, you can actually go into settings and you can have 4 alternates. So you have 1 finger and then 4 alternates. What I typically do in my Apple is I will take my pointer finger, or I'm sorry, my thumb is my primary, right? And I'll actually record my thumb twice, okay? Because it just makes it a little more forgiving without losing any security, all right? Then I'll have my pointer finger recorded and the pointer finger from my other hand. Because sometimes when I'm working on something, like I'm be drawing something and I need to get into my computer, I can still use my other hand. Okay. So those are typically how I set up mine. All right. The next one is a facial scan. So Apple has what's called Face ID. And Face ID has a lot of things behind it rather than just looking at your face and recording it. All right. So has anybody ever here seen, what was that? Like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, ever seen that show? And remember Gollum, the little creature? The way they did all those motions was they actually took the actor Andy Serkis, right? And they put all these dots on him, okay? And then had him act out the scenes, and they did a camera that just measured where all the dots were in space, all right? Then they had the artist come and create the character, and they map this artist creation onto the dots. So now they get this really fluid, accurate looking movement. So what they've done now is they said, well, hold it. We can now take this technology and map a 3D thing of our face with over 30,000 dots. Literally, there's 30,000 dots illuminating our face when this thing is going. And when we look at it, you were supposed to do this, right? So it gets a view all around our face. So instead of moving the camera around our face, we move our face in front of the camera. So this way you can see all the different sides of our face. So it builds a 3D model of our face. Then that's actually compared or blended, if you will, with models of millions of faces that they've taken into these AI models to get what your main features are, which then they take those features and create a mathematical thing, a very unique one for your face. Okay. So they break it down in all these different ways. And then it just comes up with this one hash thing that gets stored on your computer. And then that is compared every time you try to open up your device. So, and again, it never leaves your device. Yes.
That raises the question of glasses, a hat like you're wearing now,
Yep.
and any other devices.
And that's a great question. So the concern is, what if I change my appearance? We could have glasses. We might not have glasses. We might wear contacts one day, not the next day. Or men, we have beards, right? That I can't grow a beard. If I do, it's a three whisker beard. So we just can't. Our faces change. What's really neat is that we can do our initial teaching of this, and it actually adapts as things go. So for men, if we grow a beard or something like that, over time, it will adapt and update its model, okay? But if you just throw on a really big beard, let's say we just add it like, we do it like makeup or something like that, add one to us, it's gonna go, oh, I don't know who you are. Okay, but if it happens slowly over time, it'll adapt. The next thing is that, what was the other one I wanted to say? Yeah, adding things like masks and stuff, right? If there's a lot of occlusion or where it's not going to see as many features, you're gonna actually have to teach it another one. So they have an alternate appearance that you can do. And if you wear really large glasses and things like that, a lot of times you'll have to teach it two things. Most of the time, if we just do glasses and things like that, it's close enough. And the way the mathematics work out and the way you can match your face, you know, compared to all the database of faces that it's done before, it's pretty good at adapting to glasses. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
You talked yesterday about how the Apple iCloud would work across Windows and the iOS devices.
Right.
But if I have facial recognition that works seems to be really easy to put
Correct.
on my iPhone.
Right.
But if I'm using the camera on my Windows computer, will that tie in with the facial recognition for Apple?
So the question being that if I have the facial recognition, you know, taught on my device, let's say an iPhone, can I somehow tie that into the camera system that's built into my Windows computer? The answer is no. Two very different technologies. A camera is typically very 2D, it's very flat. Okay. This is a three-dimensional thing where it's actually illuminating ourselves with an array of dots and then seeing how those dots react when we move our face to make a 3D map. So it's a very different thing. You can't just put your picture in front of your camera, in front of your phone, and open it. It won't work. It needs a 3D of your face in order for it to work. The other thing is that when we go now to a computer, let's say that does not have Face ID, like my Mac, I don't have Face ID on this. It has a Touch ID. It doesn't have Face ID. But I wanted to use my credentials that are stored on my phone that are locked by my face. It will actually come up now with passkeys and things like that, where it'll come up with a little, you know, what do you call those things? The QR code that will come on the screen because I say I want to log in with a passkey. Puts up a QR code. I take a picture of that or put my camera up to it. It just takes then to the website and I can use my Face ID and my camera to get me into it. Okay. So you don't have to have all of these sensors across every single device. You could have one device that has the sensor that's required for it, and then use that to get into other devices. And they don't even have to be the same manufacturer. Okay.
Are you gonna give us the election on how to do that?
Eventually, yes. That will be when we get, I really want passkeys at the end of this year. Yeah, end of this year when Apple comes out with their passport app, and I really want to dig into that. In fact, I'm going to load it up probably when I'm in Carmel the next 2 weeks and then play with it. Then I'll have some stuff that we can talk about, but their final release is in September, October. And that's when we'll teach about it. Okay. Okay, voice scan is another one. Sometimes there are some places that allow us to use our voice in order to get into something. Voice is a little bit more difficult for me because it's easier to spoof, and I'll talk about some of the comparisons on that one. Another one that's really old that's been around for a long time is retina and iris scan. Retina scans are very, very unique, very difficult to do, but they are very secure. Okay. But it's just hard, you know, to get something like that can focus through our pupil and see our, you know, who wants to do this every time they're opening their phone? Not me. So it's not something that's really worked out in the commercial world. I'm sorry, in the private or consumer world, but it has been done in the commercial world. Okay. This is the comparison I want to talk about between the different ones. If we're looking at hand or fingerprint is actually a little bit more or has better scanning speed. As far as security, it's also a little bit better, and convenience is a little bit better just to have our fingerprint or thumbprint. Having a full hand is just not as convenient. And think about it, the sensors that they would have to have for it would have to be really big too to put our whole hand on. All right. So who wants to have that and have your phone also? It won't work too well. As far as facial scans, it actually goes up another level as far as security. It goes up another level as far as convenience. And it's about the same as fingerprint for scanning speed. Okay, so it's taken us up another notch. Apple claims even more so. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Retina scans are very high security, but convenience and scanning speed really low, and they're very expensive to do. And then finally, iris scans are very low security because people can create digital images, put a contact on, and boom, you're off and running. So it can be tricked by a photograph that's basically overlaid on your eye. And then as far as convenience is really high and scanning speed is very high. Okay. So that's why most things are right in here, okay, which is our fingerprint and our face. Make sense? Okay, and this is how Apple says it. There's two types of errors, okay? False positives and false negatives. Make sense? And in Touch ID, they get one error in 50,000. Okay, that's typically what they see. And that's either it sees our thumb and it says, that's not you, which is a false negative, right? Or somebody else grabs our phone, puts their thumb on it, and it opens up. That's a false positive, okay? So they have a 1 in 50,000 chance of that error occurring. On Face ID, it's now up to 1 in a million, okay? So you can see how Face ID is safer. And these are Apple's claims. I haven't seen the studies on this or what.
I find it doesn't, the Touch ID doesn't work very well.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Uh-huh.
So one of the problems is as we age, our hands get drier, okay, which means that the capacitance and the what do you call that? The conductivity between our thumb and the sensor is not the same. I mean, if it's too dry, it's just not going to work. It doesn't see it correctly. All right. So one of the things I do on my phone, because my hands get dry because I've been riding around on a motorcycle and my liners end up drying out my hands. So what happens is I'll take my thumb, I'll lick it, and then go like that on my pants, and guess what? It works. Okay. Okay, so don't put a wet thumb with all your spit on there. Just take it, wipe it off, but that little bit of moisture will make it work.
And you just got COVID.
The other thing too is make sure you keep your sensor clean, because if it gets particles on it, they're going to get in the way of checking your thumb or your finger, and it's not going to work properly. So we have to have a clean sensor and we have to have a moist finger or thumb. Yes.
As a nurse, you have to do it.
Yes.
And I had to go to 4 places to get fingerprinted because my fingertips were so clean from washing your hands over and over and over again.
Yep.
So if you're having trouble getting your fingerprint going on, it's because you've been washing your hands a lot because of COVID.
And this is a good point. So it goes back to when I was talking about like people that do pottery, right? Our fingerprints can actually go away depending on our profession. So Pat was talking about having to wash her hands so much being a nurse practitioner that, your fingerprints fade, and it just becomes a very unreliable way of saying that, oh yeah, this is who you are. All right.
So, Ava,
Yes.
from what you've said so far, it seems like Face ID is the ultimate choice for this. Why haven't we all moved to that instead of having fingerprints and?
So why haven't we everybody moved to Face ID? Well, for one, it's Apple's proprietary, okay? It's not something that's out there for everybody, all right? It's something that Apple developed themselves. And Apple had a leg up in this because Apple has some really close ties with Hollywood, okay? So when Hollywood was doing motion cap, a lot of that was being done on Apple computers. And so Apple was like, well, hold it. Hey, can we talk to these companies and license things and build this stack in order to get this? So they made a huge investment in that and they're protecting it. Okay. We can have Face ID on Samsung and some other devices, but it's camera based and it has been spoofed. So it's not as secure, okay? A photograph won't work, but there are ways that hackers have gotten around. Okay. All right, again, the biometric storage must only be on the device and never can leave the device. So it's never backed up, right? If you buy a new device, even though your device is backed up and you transfer it over, it's going to ask you to add new biometrics. So a new Face ID, new fingerprints, whatever. So biometric images are never stored onto the raw ones, or never stored on the device. The only thing that's stored is the cryptographic representation. Boy, say that fast. And they never, ever leave the device. All right.
You can just say crypto.
Crypto rep. There we go.
Mhm.
But a lot of people think crypto is money because,
Oh,
yeah, it's really
I see,
odd.
I see.
They mix it up with klepto.
Klepto. That's a different kind of money. Okay, so now I want to talk about one of the biggest applications for this that's out there, okay? And that's Apple Pay. And the reason why Apple Pay needed biometrics is for the things we talked about earlier: security, speed, and convenience. Can you imagine being at a checkout line and everybody having to enter their passwords, doing it wrong? Oh, the password's wrong. 5 minutes passes before we finally get through. Oh, finally, I'm gonna get to checkout now. It would take forever. This has to be just dead simple, very quick, and very, very, very secure. Okay. Advantages of Apple Pay, again, the physical credit card is never exposed. You never take a credit card out of your wallet. So a lot of thieves today, they are literally hanging around at registers, like the next person waiting in line behind you. You think they're texting their friends or whatever. They're actually photographing you and your transaction, okay? So just be careful, be aware of what's going on around you. This is happening a lot where people are taking photographs of people using their cards. They get a picture of the card and they get a picture of the PIN. Okay. So yeah, that's, if we don't have to use our physical card though, guess what? That risk is gone, right? And then the credit card number is never exposed. So now let's say we have some nefarious characters at the place we're purchasing from. And they're going into the database and saying, oh, here's someone's credit card. I'm going to go take that and sell it on the dark web and make money. All right. Well, guess what? With Apple Pay and with Google Pay, it's a one transaction number that gets created, and it only works for that transaction. Okay. It maps back to your card and your account. Okay. But like, it's a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? What is it? It's just temporary, right? Yeah, one time, ephemeral, that's the word I'm looking for. It's very ephemeral. It's there and it's gone, okay? But this way, unscrupulous merchants and stuff can't use it. Another thing about this is that one of the things that has come out, like when we were going to gas stations and things, like about 5 years ago, if you were slipping your card in, a lot of thieves were actually putting in their reader, so that as it slips in and you use it, their reader is also reading your card, okay? Well, guess what? When you have this technology, that they can't use it, okay? They might get your card number, they might sniff that out, but they don't get the whole transaction thing and they can't get there, okay?
I mean, how can they do that? Don't they have to have a device that sticks on the machine?
Yeah, they literally go at 3 in the morning and stick these in. And then
You
when
mean
people,
they're in the machine or
they're
on the-
literally been slipped into the slot of the machine so that
Oh,
when
yeah.
you use it,
Oh, my God.
their reader and the machine reader are working simultaneously.
It stopped, wasn't it?
What's that?
Wasn't that caught and stopped?
People were getting caught, but it didn't, that's what stopped them. What stopped them was this technology, because they just didn't, they weren't useful anymore. Okay. Did you have a question, Paul?
I don't understand Apple Pay's basic idea. What is Apple Pay?
So Apple Pay is using our device to basically act as our credit card, or, as we check out. Okay. So instead of me using, yes,
Is this a device?
yes, our phone, our iPad, could both be used to check out at a counter.
He's had classes on that too.
Yeah, and some of these will be reviewed from those classes.
Beta, the only thing is, you can't count on your phone, you have to have the credit card too, because some places won't take Apple Pay.
That's correct. So if we look at a lot of places, depending on what they call the point of sale system, not all point of sale systems support Apple Pay and Google Pay. Some of them are just credit cards. All right. So I'm finding now I easily more than 80% of the places I go to, really do accept Apple Pay. And it's odd. Like I go to the farmer's market every weekend. Thank you, Paul, for the recommendations of where to go. And almost every vendor takes Apple Pay. I mean, they just literally hold up the thing and whoop, done. So it works out really well. Diana.
Yeah, isn't it true that if the machine takes the tap to pay, you can use Apple Pay? Because it's
Usually, yes. The only thing is that sometimes the merchant won't pay for the extension of the service, so they'll disable it. But it's physically capable of doing it, but the merchant may not have paid for the extra feature.
Okay.
But usually if you can see the little tap to pay, which I'll show the little emblem in a bit, that means they will usually take Apple Pay also. So also means that they don't have to slide their card in. You can just wave your card over it, tap your card on it. Okay. Okay, so let's go about purchasing something with the Apple Wallet. This is what the procedure looks like. So prior to use, of course, we have to have our cards and stuff in there, and we'll talk about that at the end here. All right. And we have to have Face ID and Touch ID enabled for the wallet. So those are the two things that need to happen before we use it. All right. But this is what it is. Step one, just simply take your device, mine's been bag, and just double click the power button. Okay. So if you double click the power button, the one on the side, it's not really the power button anymore on most phones, but just double click the side button, and then that will bring up the wallet. And it will also look at your face and say, oh yeah, this person, now you're authorized, and you'll say, hold to scanner, hold near scanner, and you can do it. All right. This is next is that it's going to authorize it, and it'll say either your Face ID, your Touch ID, or it'll say, oh, neither of those worked, put in your passcode. Okay. So you can use any of three of those to authorize it.
A thought just came to me, it'd be a whole lot easier to put a chip in like you do your dog.
Please don't. So this is the symbol that Diana was mentioning earlier. This is the symbol that typically takes touchless contactless payments. So what you do is that once you have everything open and authorized, you then put the top of your phone where that symbol is. Okay. And it might be on the screen, it might be to the side, it actually might be on another device. It depends on how they do it. So like whenever I go to Jamba Juice, it's actually separate from this terminal. So I'm doing all of the stuff on this terminal, but they have another device on the counter where I have to put for the where that symbol is. Okay. So just be aware that that's the symbol we're looking for. All right. Oh, once you do that, it'll either beep or vibrate on your phone saying, oh yeah, it worked. And then it'll just go through and say, yep, it's now registered. What I love about Apple Pay too is immediately Apple Pay and Google Pay come up and say, this transaction, if it comes up as a notification, this transaction just happened at this thing for this much. Okay. And often I don't even take a receipt anymore because I have those little things as a note. I will take a receipt if it's a warranty issue, right? If there's something where I want to return things or something like that, I'll keep the receipt. But otherwise, I just keep this, and I know what to do to reconcile my accounts. Okay.
Is Apple Pay beginning to extend to debit cards?
Is Apple Pay extending to debit cards? Yes, you can put a debit card or a credit card in. Okay. In fact, we always recommend using credit cards for any transaction out in the public, whether it's online or in public, because there's better protections for credit cards by law and regulation than anything else. A debit card actually doesn't have as good a protection. So I will not use my debit card unless I can use Apple Pay. I just won't, because I don't want somebody taking out, tens of thousands of dollars out of my account, and then it's so hard to get back. Okay. It can really mess with my payments. So I don't want that to happen.
Veda,
Yes.
are you saying that if you use Apple Pay, a debit card is just as safe as a credit card then?
I would say that it's just as safe security wise. If something goes wrong, though, as far as you need to get your money back because something else happened out off to the side, it could be harder because the regulations don't protect us as well with a debit card.
All right, thanks.
Okay. But security wise, yes, it's equal. Okay, now let's talk about how we get our wallet prepared in order to use all this. All right. So first we open up the wallet app. Then once we get the wallet app open, it'll show a list of cards and it'll typically have your, if you've never used it before, it'll have your Apple Cash card in it. That would be the only card in there. I blanked this out because I don't want to have pictures of my cards, out there for the public. If you want to add a card, all you do, or whichever type of thing, you just hit the plus key up here or plus sign. And then it'll say, what do you want to add to your wallet? Any of your previous cards? Well, it says none because there's none in the library. So this is interesting. So when I get a new phone or I transfer my phone or I completely erase it and rebuild it from a backup, it'll always have all my cards from the wallet available for me to add again in the library. It'll just say my previous cards and I can add them, but it forces me then to add the little security code for each one. Okay. So it's pretty slick that it puts them there, but then I have to have the little 3-digit or 4-digit security code to add the card.
Do you have to download that thing?
Download which one? The wallet?
The little picture, because it's not in.
So if it's not there, just do a search for wallet and it could come up because you might not have added it to your home screen, but it should be there unless you've deleted it. Because it is one of Apple's thing they put on every device. Okay. All right, next. Once we get to, let's say, our debit or credit card that we want to add, we just hit it here. Then it'll come back here and it'll say, hey, you're about to add this. Do you want to continue or not? We hit continue. And then you literally take the side of your card that has all the information and put it up to the camera. The camera reads it and then adds all the info. Okay. So on my, what do you call it? On all my cards, this works really well, except the Apple card. Apple's credit card only has my name and it has an Apple logo. That's it, which I really like, but it makes it a little more difficult. Apple has some other things to add, but it'd be more difficult to add someplace else. Okay. Then this is what it would look like afterwards if you added all your cards. Like here's someone, they have, what is this? Novo, they have SoFi, they've got Capital One, they've got the Apple Cash card, another Capital One card, and then Prime, that's going to be the Amazon card. This was what? Another Capital One and PNC Bank. You can see you can have all of these credit cards so you don't have to carry them around. Okay, you can have them on the phone.
How do you get the Apple Cash card?
It should come up automatically. It should ask you, do you want to have the Apple Cash card? Yeah, and I've used this a lot, like at an Apple store when I return some things. I say, I'll just put on the cash card. Okay, so it makes it very, very simple.
So how do I get that? How would I get
If you don't have it, you can just add it. You can go to plus. I believe that comes up in here. Let's see here. No, it doesn't. I'll have to take a look, but there was a way of just adding it as a pass card. A cash card. Okay, so once we get put it in, then this will be everything in the list that we can use. I wanted to show this video too. How do we make it so that which of these is it going to use if I purchase something? The one that's down here at the bottom that shows all of the card, that's going to be the default card. And the way you change your default card is you touch it. Like if I wanted, let's say this one, the Apple card, I would touch it and hold it, and then I drag it down to the bottom. So it's now at the bottom in the front. It looks like this. then release it. And it's saying Apple Card is now going to be your default card, and you just say, okay. All right. Now, what if though I started a transaction, but I went, oh no, that's not the card I want. You can actually go into your wallet and select the card you want, and it'll be the card you use for that transaction. It's just a little extra step. Okay. Typically, I choose my default card before I start the transaction. But again, most of my time I just use one card. I don't, because I want all my points and stuff on one card. So
Where do you find you can use this feature? The grocery store or?
yeah, most grocery stores definitely have it. Most department stores. Like I said too, whenever I go to the farmer's market, most of them take it too.
Mhm.
Does the Apple Cash Card have to be linked to your bank account?
Does the Apple Cash Card have to be linked to my bank account? No. There's several ways I can put money in it. I can put money in through my debit card, through a credit card. I can, send money. I can receive money from other people to my Apple card, my Apple Cash Card. Okay. So there's a lot of ways of having money sent around with it. Apple Cash Card was really meant to be something that as kind of a competitor to PayPal and Venmo, so that it's really easy with just sending a message. I can send money from my cash card, okay, or receive money. Here's an interesting one: is adding a transit card. So when we're on BART, we don't have to take our card out. We can just use our Apple Pay and go right on the sensor. So to let us into the gate, and we're off and running. So number one, transit card. And then we're going to tell it which one. The Clipper card is the one we use here for what do you call it? For BART, or most of our buses, and what Caltrain. All those except Clipper cards. All right. Then once we do that, we can go here to continue. And then it'll just add the card, and it'll say, well, now that we've added your card, how much money do you want to put on it? Okay. And then you just tell it here how much you want. This one really confused me a lot because I had like 3 or 4 Clipper cards that had stuff on it, because I'd be in San Francisco. I'm like, oh, darn it, I don't have my card with me. This is what I really like about this service now, is I'm never without my card. And I'd buy another card and go through it, right? And I'm like, okay, I want to transfer all those balances down to the one here. You can't do that. The way this one works is it creates a Clipper card for you that you could use, and then you have to keep the balance and manage it here on the phone. Okay. You can't transfer a balance. It won't let you do that. Okay. Number 5, agreeing to the terms and conditions. And then number 6, double clicking to pay when you use it. All right. This one's not available in California yet. I've been using the DMV's kind of experiment that they're doing right now. It's almost like a beta, if you will. You can download the DMV wallet app from the App Store if you want, and then put in your license, and then it says, okay, take pictures of both sides of your license, and it takes a picture of you, and it does it in multiple colors. It's really a trip. And it verifies that the picture you're showing is the one that's on your also on your license. And then it puts the license in the app on your phone. Okay. So now it's legal to use that as your driver's license here in California. They don't have it integrated with a wallet yet. California is doing this other experiment because they've got concerns about privacy and all these other things. They want to make sure all of this stack works properly. So they're first doing it in their own app. Once they have that, then they'll extend it out to here. But there's places, I think Florida, Alabama, I think Texas, they do have it so that you can, Colorado, that you can put the license into the wallet. Okay. We're not quite there yet here in California. All right. And that's all I have on all that. So the big takeaway I wanted, anyway, this is going to be a much more technical discussion originally, but the biggest thing I wanted to do was just start with this at the very beginning, is people understanding that we're not completely replacing passwords. It's a both and. Passwords and passkeys are going to work in conjunction. But in the future, short term here, we're going to have an option where we can just use passkeys. All right, any questions? Anything
Dana?
you want demoed? Yeah, what do you want?
When you use Apple Pay and a debit card, a credit card, does the merchant pay more for the Apple
Oh.
Pay use and plus the debit card use or credit card?
So so the question being, does the merchant pay more to use Apple Pay and the credit card? Typically, no. Typically, if they're using it on a transaction basis, Apple's gone out and made a whole bunch of commercial agreements with the credit card companies, so they share that burden rather than switching it all to consumer. So the credit card doesn't make as much money because they're sharing it with Apple now. However, there is some friction there because some sellers, they will not do this because they actually have to pay extra monthly for their service, their point of sale service, in order to receive contactless payments. Okay, so that's why it's not 100% out there yet because the merchant might have to pay extra, but they don't pay it on a transaction basis. Did I answer the question, Diana?
Yes, thanks.
Cool. We had something in chat here. Use to enable audio. Oh, yes.
Does using Apple Pay affect any of the benefits you get by, they say using for travel or for food or anything like that?
So like if you wanted your credit card to accrue points, that type of thing, no, you don't lose any of the benefit. You're still using that credit card, but through the Apple Pay service, and you'll get all the points. That's one of the reasons why my default card is one card, because I get the biggest payback from that one.
If I want to use Apple Cash to pay someone,
Mhm.
what kind of information do I have to have on the person I'm paying?
Typically just either their Apple ID or their email. And if you can send them a message, they can receive it and receive the money.
You don't need bank.
Nope. Yeah, you don't need it in between at all. For most of that though, depending on the age group I'm working with, if they're 30 and under, it's usually Venmo. If it's 50 and under, it's mix of PayPal and Venmo. And for us that are older than 50, we typically don't like it. There's no PayPal, no Venmo available, and I will typically do that by email address. Hey, check. No, but we can do it by email address and things like that. PayPal works the same way. If you know a person's email address, you can send the money through PayPal.
I use Venmo, but I don't know. The receiving person just tells me to use Venmo, and so I do it.
Exactly, and Venmo makes it so easy. Yeah, like even when I have people deliver stuff to the house, I want to Venmo them a tip, right? They just literally put their phone out there and it has the QR code, and I take a picture with my Venmo and send them a tip. It's so simple.
Get the money on the other end. I mean.
They also have a Venmo account, and it's
So they pay for the
instantaneous.
account.
Yeah, and it's literally less than 5 seconds, and boop, it just shows up in their account.
Is Venmo pretty safe?
Yeah, it's fairly safe. I'd say it's as safe as PayPal.
Zelle.
The Zelle, be very wary of. Okay, Zelle is a third-party thing that this is what I really don't like about our banking industry. All the big banks got together to create Zelle. It was a partnership, but they created Zelle as a separate company. But now, if we have any problems, Zelle points to the bank points at Zelle, and nothing happens. Okay, and there's no regulations that are holding their feet to the fire. So I'm very, very wary of using Zelle. I recommend not to. Okay. I mean, if something goes wrong, most of the time things go right. But if something goes wrong and you try to get back out of something in Zelle, it's almost impossible. Okay.
A lot of people have lost money in fraud and Zelle. And Elizabeth Warren got all the CEOs of the big banks together in a Senate hearing.
Yep.
And said, Well, ask them what they're gonna do to fix this problem.
And then
You
nothing.
got no response.
That's correct.
Oh,
Because no CEO is going to stand up and say, well, this is what we're going to do, because then they're in court, because this is now in the Senate chambers. It's now official and legal. And no one's going to take that liability on by answering that question. I certainly wouldn't. However, I prefer when I can measure them by their behavior, right? And unfortunately, banks only behave typically by what's legally required, not what's ethically required. And commercially, they've got to win us. So PayPal and Venmo have to win our trust. So typically they behave ethically and then legally. Okay. Any other questions? All right, this went pretty good. Does this help clear things up though about all this stuff?
Does. because
Okay, good.
yesterday-
So we were able to land the plane, right?
Yeah, that's great, that's great.
Okay, good. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
We were able to land those.
You again, Maida?
Well,